just a number, but the pattern is based on a relationship between two things. Okay, so it's no longer talking about something like consecutive integers, and so we know a starting point of just a number, okay, but I know that Tony makes $50 more than Sally. Okay, what do I do when the relationship is just between the two things? Okay, we call this defining one variable in terms of another. It also goes back to knowing our key terms of a number and sum and all those types of things. Okay, so the perimeter of a rectangle is 58 inches. We want to find the dimensions if the length is 5 inches longer than the width. So, first thing, what does this problem ask us to find? Yes. And width, right? So it's asking, finding the dimensions, right? This right here says find the length and the width. That's what that is asking us to do. Okay, we have to understand what that terminology is before we can do anything else. Apparently that's not going to come back up correctly. So whenever it is asking us to just find two things, right? We just want to find two things, and the two things are related to each other. So now it's not an infinite list of consecutive integers or 5 different people who are winning prizes, but we have 2 unknowns that are directly related to each other. We want to find the length, and we want to find the width, and those 2 things pertain to each other. Okay, we are going to start by defining one of them to be a variable. Now, you could just randomly pick. You can decide to define whichever one you want. Your life will be happier if you define whichever one you read second. So like literally in this comparison phrase, the length is 5 inches longer than the width. Which comes second, length or width? Width. So we are just going to define width to be a variable. What might be a good variable to define width as? W. I mean, you could pick another letter, but W would be a good one. L would be not a good one. All right, step 2. We are then going to define the other one based on our basic translations. So the length is 5 inches longer than the width. We're going to go by the rules we learned on Friday. The length, is, what does is tell us to write? 5 inches longer. What do we think longer is going to be?
Plus 5.
Addition. Does it matter if we put 5 plus or plus 5? No, right? The order of addition doesn't matter. Then the width. What am I going to write for width? W, because that's just what I assigned the width to be. So this now says that the length is W plus 5. Any questions on where that W plus 5 came from? So we know that our width is W, and we know that our length is W plus 5. So our next step is just going to be to now fill in and do an equation for perimeter. How do we find the perimeter of a rectangle?
Length plus width, like length plus width plus length.
Sure, so length plus width plus length plus width. How else can we find perimeter?
2 L's.
2 lengths plus 2 widths. How else can we find perimeter? 2 times the length plus the width, right where it's in parentheses. If you have one that you prefer, that's fine. A lot of my students will just go to this concept. They'll sort of draw a picture. I don't really care which one's length and width. I know some students are like, you can't do that way as a length or width. I have terrible spatial reasoning, so it doesn't ever bother me. I just kind of always make one of them be whatever, and the other one be the other one. If you have a preference, I'm sorry if it bothers you. How many sides does a rectangle have? So what's the measurement of this side going to be? And what's the measurement of this side going to be? Are we okay with that being the picture of our rectangle? So if we're adding up all the sides, how many W's do we have?
4.
4 W's plus equals. Where'd that 58 come from, Mason?
The perimeter of a rectangle is 58.
Right? It said the perimeter is 58. It equals 58. Now what am I going to do with this thing? Solve it, which hopefully we all agree that we could solve this. Okay, so if our width is 12, are we just done? W equals 12, we circle it, we're done.
Nope.
No. Why not?
We have to find the length.
It said to find the dimensions. We need the length and the width. So our width is 12, but what is our length going to be?
17.
Where'd you get that 17, William?
You add the 5 to the width.
We said that the length is W plus 5. So 12 plus 5 is 17. So I circle these and I'm done, right? What am I missing still? A what?
Supposed to add it all together.
Nope.
What's the point of
Nope.
making
A label. Does this one need a label?
Yes.
Yep, it sure does. Is this 1 inches? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one you cannot just tell me 12 and 17. Because this one I need a label and I need to know which one is the width and which one is the length. It would be very annoying if someone built your house sideways dimensions, right? That's probably not going to work out so well. We need to know which is which. So let's look at this next example. The width of a rectangle is twice the length. The perimeter is 108 centimeters. Find the length and width of the rectangle. What is this asking us to find? The length and the width. So we have 2 unknowns, but those 2 unknowns aren't a pattern. The 2 unknowns are a relationship, where it's telling us the relationship right here. What do we read second? So that's what we're going to define first. What letter would we like length to be? Okay, now we're just going to translate what we underlined. Okay, so the width of a rectangle is, what do we write for is? Equals twice. What does twice tell us to do? The length. Right, those are all just those key terms that we learned on Friday. So if we want to do perimeter, oh, that was a terrible rectangle, but you know, just go with it. What's our perimeter going to be if we add all those up?
6L.
Where'd you get that 6L?
Is 2L plus 2L is 4L plus L.
Right, so 4L, 5L, 6L. And this is something we can then solve. Are we done with L equals 18?
No.
No, what are we going to do with that?
5 by 2.
Twice the length. Gives us this. What label do I want to put on here? Okay, realistically, this stuff right here isn't really fully anything new. Most of us should say, yeah, I've seen something like this before. Would we agree? Okay, we now want to take it to the next piece, but why do we do that? It's the same thing with the consecutive integers. It's not the piece alone. It's how can we then take that idea and transfer it to a new problem? How do we know that it's a story problem that we want to use that option on? So if I look at this story problem up here, a pair of pants costs $30 more than a shirt. Guys, this is a super simple one because I wanted us to be able to talk about the concept. So don't say you can just do it in your head. Yes, duh. I want to talk about the concept. Okay, a pair of pants costs $30 more than a shirt. Together, they are $55. What is the cost of the shirt and pants individually? What is this problem asking us to find? Shirt and pants. So how many things do we need to find? Two. So our hope is that if there are two things we need to find, that we can then find a comparison phrase. So do we see a phrase up here that talks about what the cost of the pants is in relationship to the shirts? Do we see that type of phrase up here? Once we find that phrase, everything falls in the same concept. So we want to define whatever we read second. So what do we read second? So I have now twice in my years of teaching, it's almost like I've jinxed myself, so I'm going to try really hard not to do it this trimester. My students will get giggling, and I'm like, guys, what's so funny? And finally one student will raise their hand and say, Mrs. McKinney, you left out the R. Oops. Okay, what is the pants then going to be? Well, the pants are $30 more than. What does more than tell us to do? Add. So my students go, cool, no problem. I'll just add up 4 sides of a rectangle and I'll set it equal to 55. Does this have anything to do with a rectangle?
Yes.
So you do have to kind of still use your brain. I mean, we do need to know what together means. So when this problem says together they are $55, what does that mean?
When they're added up together.
The total. I mean, I'm not going to go to the grocery store and every time they ring something up, they subtract it off. Every time they ring something up, what are they going to do? Add it on. So how much does a shirt cost? S. And how much do pants cost?
30.
And how much should they cost together? So this is something we can solve. Okay, so all you decimal lovers, why am I writing this one as a decimal?
Money.
Because it's money. So this is going to get a money label. So our shirts are 12. Our shirt was $12.50. How much is our pants going to be?
42.
Where'd you get that from, William?
Because I added 30 to 12.50.
Plug that back in. Okay, so we don't have a ton of time, but I am going to give you a little bit. Your homework.